I'm Gab. He's Don Hutchison.
No Jules.
No Jules today. He's traveling at the Women's Euros. But don't worry, we'll take good care of you. We'll do our best. I'm back in the studio. I feel like I've come home, Don.
Same.
And you're here to greet me.
Same. Been away at the Club World Cup. It's nice to be back home.
There's a lot to get through because obviously we've got the Women's Euros had started, the Club World Cup. We've got our semifinalists, and we're going to start actually with Paris Saint-Germain. Oh, and we've got lots of transfer stuff. Don't worry, we'll be talking Gyökeres and whatnot. But Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern.
Yeah.
This was the heavyweight clash. Paris Saint-Germain go through. What I was struck by just watching this is how it was almost like mirror images of each other. What I love about Paris Saint-Germain is Luis Enrique he's really good at playing a possession game when they so choose.
Yeah.
Or otherwise they're good at pressing you.
Yep.
And it felt like certainly the first hour or so of this game was just high press, lose the ball, everybody run back, high press the other way, lose the ball, everybody run back.
I watched PSG at the Club World Cup, and I've done quite a few of their games, and I worked on the Inter Miami game, not just the Inter Miami game, but what they've done in the Champions League. And I really get the feeling, Gav, that football's now evolving. I think probably just before Pep, but more so Pep was all about possession. Not necessarily a slower tempo game, but it was keeping the ball. Don't give the ball away. 5-10 yard passes, no high risk 30-yard passes when you can give the ball away. I watch Luis Enrique since he's been the Spanish manager, and he bored me to tears when he was the manager. They had like close to 1,000 passes a game. Never looked like scoring. Now I'm watching him with his PSG
This
side.
man was a professional footballer and a midfielder who was known for his passing, and passing bores him.
His Spanish side passed bored me to tears because it was almost like...
Because Morata couldn't finish.
It was almost like, let's have 1,000 passes because we're guaranteed to win a game. And it was boring. Right. Now I'm looking at a guy who's got a young, energetic side that can beat you by closing you down, that can beat you by their skill. In my opinion, when I watch PSG now under Luis Enrique, they're the best team in the world. They are the most exciting team in the world to watch. That's why I think now everyone's going to try and copy what PSG are doing. And that's why I think over the next 18 months, football's going to evolve from that passing style to wingers who are exciting, taking players on. Whoa. Best two fullbacks in the world, best midfield three in the world, all the dynamism at the top end of the pitch.
Okay. I'm not sure you're with football, but pressing, the high press is nothing new in football. It's not an evolution here.
I know.
But all right, let's save that for later for the podcast chat. What I want to emphasize here is that Bayern, until Musiala got hurt, and we're going to get to that in a minute, Bayern hung in there.
Yep.
And I think they certainly had the chance. Donnarumma had to make some huge saves.
He did.
Donnarumma in the news also because of when he came off that clash with Musiala. It looked horrendous. Those reactions on the pitch. Now we know Musiala, the injury could have been a lot worse. It looks like they're talking 3 to 4 months. I know you are not a goalkeeper. What's your take on this? Because we heard very different versions of this from Manuel Neuer and Thibaut Courtois. Courtois saying, I would have done the same thing. It's normal for a goalkeeper. You don't have time to react.
Yeah.
Neuer saying that it was rash and it was dangerous what he did. Remember, no foul even.
I think probably Neuer's probably seen that from his team and his players' perspective.
Or maybe he remembers himself doing that Gonzalo Higuain not that long ago.
Well, maybe. But I think when you look at the incident and you look at it and you go, total accident. Both players committed to try and get in the ball. A 50-50, that happens all of the time. And every now and again, one every couple of years, a player comes off with a bad injury. You can't fault Donnarumma. In my opinion, you can't. I think he was committed to getting the ball. I think he tried his best to try and get there. Musiala was trying to score. That's the classic example of a 50-50 and someone coming off that little bit worse than the other. It looks terrible when you see the injury and when you read about what he's done, and it is because we all feel it as players. But I wouldn't put any blame on Donnarumma.
Now, late in the game, Paris Saint-Germain, we talk about this too, 2 red cards. The Lucas Hernandez one a bit harsh.
What?
What? Okay. All right. You didn't think so. All right. The William Pacho one I thought was ridiculous.
Well, I thought Hernandez, after coming on for about 5 minutes and then doing that.
Totally unnecessary. These guys are going to be suspended.
It's all right. They can beat you a 9. They can score a 9. And they did.
They did, yes. There's a Kylian Mbappe. Ousmane Dembele, of course, scoring. One of many tributes that we saw over the weekend, of course, to the late Diogo Jota. But from my perspective, that was kind of still a reminder, this is still a young team. The still team gets a little bit rash. Luis Enrique will be absolutely furious because Pacho, I think, has been arguably the best defender, close to it in this tournament.
Yeah.
That I think is going to be an issue.
You rolled your
in
eyes
the
a little bit
semifinal.
when I said best team in the world. Do you disagree?
Let's leave that for the Gab and Jules podcast. All right, Don.
Look at your eyes.
You challenged me with this, like the best team in the world, blah, blah, blah. Answers, I genuinely don't know. Because, yes.
In a couple of weeks' time, we will know if they win it.
Well, no, who wins the Club World Cup. I think, Gigi Donnarumma's agent, Vincenzo Raiola, made the point. He's like, well, without his saves, they wouldn't have beaten Barcelona. They wouldn't have beaten, and they wouldn't have beaten, sorry, not Barcelona. They wouldn't have beaten Arsenal and
Villa.
That's right.
Liverpool.
And Liverpool. So the reason I'm just slightly hesitant to go and, I mean, they may be the best team in the world, and certainly they deserve,
in my eyes, they are,
to win the Champions League. When you're so reliant on a goal, I know it's a game of, no, but what I'm saying is,
it is his job.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm here. Okay. Arsenal fans, get ready. Are Arsenal the best team in the Premier League?
No.
Okay. Arsenal against the best team in the world, eventually, came down to Gigi Donnarumma making a couple unbelievable saves.
The best team in England is Liverpool, and they ran them into extra time. And they should have scored 2 or 3 in the first 20 minutes. But Donnarumma was on fire in the second 45, and in extra time, and their young legs took over. How can Arsenal? I laughed when Arteta said they're the best team in the world, Arsenal, because Liverpool were 15 points clear in the Premier League at the time.
Okay.
Who ran PSG into extra time in pens?
Right. So laugh at Arteta all you want. Look, and I agree.
Well, I will.
Having watched these
Liverpool
games,
took them to pens.
Sure, but. So doesn't that undermine your argument that they're by far the best team in the world?
Here's the biggest compliment I can pay to PSG.
I don't understand this. Wait, if Liverpool...
I'm not saying Liverpool are the best team in the world, but what I'm saying is Liverpool have got more case to put their hands up than Arsenal.
Okay, but the point is, in these games, right, except for the final, they were run very, very close, and their goalkeeper had to make some incredible saves, which you might not have gotten to, right?
Granted.
And look, I mean, I think the first leg against Liverpool was not close. The one with
they battered them.
Harvey Elliott.
They battered them.
Right. But so for me to come out and sort of definitively crowd them, not to mention that they also already lost a game in this tournament, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would pump the brakes a little bit.
Well, here's why
Let's see how they do against the mighty Real Madrid and Xabi Alonso.
This is
and
why,
possibly in the final against Chelsea or Fluminense. Yeah.
Let's see. This is why I say... This is why I think it's a massive compliment to PSG. Why I sit here and say they are the best team in the world.
It's like having Jules back.
No,
come on.
No, I've got no dog in the fight here. But if you're going to try and improve that PSG starting 11, there's probably only 3 or 4 players in the world that would get in that team.
Okay, listeners, this is your challenge.
So if you want to swap Donnarumma for Courtois, you can if you want, but it's semantics. It's like millimetres. You're not seeing a massive upgrade. You ain't swapping the 2 fullbacks for anyone in the world. They're the best 2. You'd probably put Van Dijk alongside Marquinhos.
Or somebody else, yeah.
Or someone else, or one.
Marquinhos has not had the best season either. I know.
All right, but we're talking one position. If you're putting Van Dijk there,
I think you could probably upgrade both centre backs if you really want to go there.
But hear me out. Give me one. You ain't.
As much as I love Donnarumma, by the way, Paris Saint-Germain don't even think he's that good if it's true that he's got a year left on his contract and they're relaxed
but
about it.
But you just said he was on fire.
Oh, he was on fire.
Well,
but
so he's brilliant then.
I'm not sure Luis Enrique shares your view that Donnarumma cannot possibly be improved upon because
no, I didn't say. I said if you want to upgrade players by a margin, you can. But you're not going to look at Donnarumma and go, oh, if we sign Courtois, he's like a million times better. The margins are small. The midfield 3 you wouldn't change.
You don't think Rodri would be an upgrade?
No, I'd look at that midfield 3 and I think they function really well. They all complement each other. You ain't changing Kvaratskhelia on the left-hand side. You ain't really changing Dembele. So then you've probably got Mo Salah on the right-hand side for Liverpool. So you're looking at like 2 or 3 players.
Sorry, Lamine Yamal. There's no room for you in the side.
You can't. There's only 11 boys. Would you pick Yamal over Mo Salah?
What about...
No. Would you pick Yamal over Mo Salah? They're playing the same position. You can only have 11.
Different sorts of players, but
answer the question.
I would play Mo Salah through the middle.
Oh, get out of town!
Can do that.
You get my argument.
No,
there's only 3 or 4 players in the world that gets that PSG team.
And I think it's also true that Luis Enrique has made them more than the sum of their parts. Let's then go back to Bayern now, because obviously Musiala's had injuries in and out throughout.
He's had a trouble year, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's had a difficult season. But obviously his talent's not in question.
Yeah.
And I think there were moments last year when they were accused of, not least by me, of Musiala dependency. Now you're looking at a long stop. They've been linked, and we'll get to this later, with Nick Voldemort. He's a very different player from Musiala, even though you can say he occupies a similar position behind the striker. My question is, do you have an in-house solution, or does it mean you have to go back on the market? Because I'll tell you, actually, I'm asking a rhetorical question. I'll give you the answer as I view it. I want to see Olise play at 10.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to see Olise play at 10. You may need to pick up another winger.
So Coman on the left, Gnabry on the right. You're not a Gnabry fan.
No, these guys, I don't. I mean, like
Coman, I love.
If he stays fit, Gnabry's contract, I think, is winding down anyway. So, you're going.
But you're essentially losing two players, aren't you? You're losing Thomas Müller and Musiala, your two number 10s. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, so you've got to replace two amazing players.
You're going to have to do that. I think maybe you can also look at the other option is if Bowie produces, maybe you can think of playing Goretzka, and just going more sort of 4-3-3. If you don't, if the Olise solution isn't there, right?
I think
because if you've got a fit Pavlovic, you've got Kimmich, you've got ballers in midfield, and then you can play Goretzka as kind of like.
I think you'll buy. Do you not think you'll buy? I do.
But I don't know that you can buy a number 10 though. I think you have to think in terms of buying in the winger role.
Yeah, so you could buy a winger and then shift Olise in one. I think that makes more sense.
Yeah.
You can give Olise a bit of a free role because he's a fantastic footballer with a good brain.
In terms of the game itself, though, Paris Saint-Germain, the best team in the world, by far, can only be improved in a couple of positions.
Yeah.
Can we give Bayern and my man Vinny Company a little bit of credit? Because they've put up with so much crap this season. And I said there was a moment when they could have won this game.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Courtois save at the end.
Well, no, you mean the Donnarumma?
Donnarumma save, sorry.
Yeah. Courtois plays for a different team.
I know.
But there were moments when this is to me, going back to what you were saying before, if you play this wild, high counter press, you're always preying upon the possibility that first of all, I'm not such a fan of it because you're always preying on opponents' mistakes rather than creating something. And look, this is not a knock on Paris Saint-Germain.
No, but as you said before,
different ways, right?
As you said before, the press is not something new. It's been happening for 50 years.
But Harry Kane gives the ball away. Desiree Doué comes forward, and he finds that spot.
That's what they can do. It's moments. They can boss you in midfield, PSG, but they can create moments because they've got skillful players. But going back to Bayern, I think you're right. I think you have to give them credit for what they've done last season and what Vinny's trying to do there, trying to change the style a little bit. But I do think now with Thomas Müller leaving and Musiala's injury, they're going to have to buy. They're going to have to strengthen.
No, I don't think there's any question there. But that's a good transition to Thomas Müller, actually, because what a career he's had. I always wonder, is there a good way to say goodbye to your star player, right? And people often say, like, best run teams would rather let a guy go a year early than a year late.
Yeah.
I think Thomas Müller, until the end, the last couple of years, he's not one of those guys who got old and embarrassed himself out there.
No.
And I think it's partly because, all right, he lost athleticism. I mean, for me, Thomas Müller, not the most technically gifted player.
No.
But
that's fair.
A phenomenal athlete.
Yep.
And I know it's a cliche.
You'd say he got the most out of his career.
He's the smartest guy on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, his understanding.
Would you, if you're Vinny Company, would you not be tempted after Musiala's injury to try and persuade him to stay for one more year?
No.
Or is that done?
He can't play number 10. He's not. I mean, that's done.
That's the one position I thought he could play at his age with his brain.
With his brain, but he doesn't have the technical ability to. You put a guy on him, he's not going to have that.
But there's different number 10s. You might see a number 10 as like a Messi or a Maradona, where they're
but
skillful.
I want a guy
who you can run into positions.
Yeah, but I want a guy who can replicate as much as possible Musiala, so that I don't then have to tinker everything. I don't want a totally different number 10.
That's how you see the game. But number 10s can be brilliant at running.
That's fine. But even assuming Müller at his age suddenly becomes brilliant, leaving aside the athleticism side of it, right? But Musiala,
That's just a thought.
Well, look, Bayern operate against teams who park the bus. Musiala in tight spaces,
and he's great.
He's nearly unplayable,
and he's good in the air. So Thomas Müller. So if you are going to be playing against a low block and you're putting crosses in, who better?
Right, but then I might as well say and then make it a front two and have him and Kane and have my wingers pumping crosses, right? Then that's another way of playing. But then he's not playing number 10 anymore, right?
I know. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
Okay, yeah, I think
literally
exactly. I want my number 10 to at least say can't be Musiala, but he can do more Musiala type stuff.
I get that.
So I certainly would love to see that there. Just to round this out, we were both there at the Club World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Both sent home from the Club World Cup.
Round of 16.
Mark Ogden's out there. There you go.
My last game was watching the best team in the world in PSG. Dismantled into Miami. Could have been 15-0.
Just in terms of the football out there, I wrote a column saying that the other teams, people were saying like, oh, look, the quarterfinals, they'll be like the Champions League. It'll be 8 European teams, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Instead, as it happens, we had 3 non-European teams in the quarterfinals. We had teams from 4 continents, and Sundowns came very, very close
I've done
as well.
3 times out there. Privileged to watch them.
Is the gap maybe between the big European sides and the rest of the world not as big as some people? It's not like they're automatically going to wipe the floor with all of them.
But that was the most intriguing thing before you watched a ball being kicked. From my angle, was watching. My first game was the Sundowns versus Ulsan HD, South Korean side. So you're watching the South African side against the South Korean side. Then you're watching Inter Miami taking on Dortmund and Porto, and you're watching Fluminense and Palmeiras. My intrigue came from I've seen Juventus play Borussia Dortmund a million times, or Man City play Real Madrid a million times. I've never seen Brazilian sides take on American sides.
And have you seen
sides.
That maybe the gap with Europe? This is what I'm asking. The gap is not as big as
it's definitely not as big, but it's different because you're looking at the European side, some of the powerhouses who rely on intensity and fitness against the technical ability of the Brazilian sides. That's where the matchups for me were really intriguing. Is the fitness of the European sides and their run and power and their stamina going to beat a team that's technically very good and keep hold of the ball and strangle a life out your possession? That was my intrigue. So now when you match it all and you lob everything together and you stick it in a pot, you go, well, actually, it's really, really close. In my opinion, I think the margins are really close because you're watching different styles and different formations and different techniques, different strategies going against different teams. I think it's fascinating. It's amazing.
I think the other variance here that we need to bear in mind is that most of these teams,
and some of the teams are mid-season. A lot of the teams have finished their seasons. So there's all those little dynamics to put into the pot.
There's also the fact that some teams have played a lot more games than other teams. And by the way, it's not the European teams. All those people make excuses. They're tired. The Brazilian teams played more games.
I think they're close to 65 games or something.
Yeah, exactly. So STFU on that one. But, no, but for me, the other thing which makes this interesting is that all these teams, with the exception perhaps of the Seattle Sounders, who of course are there because they won the CONCACAF Champions Cup 4 years ago, and since then the team's basically been gutted and all the good players left, right? But they still made a decent account of them. Most of these teams are powerhouse teams. Most of these teams are used to going out and dominating the opposition.
Yeah.
So you're going out there with a sense of confidence. Maybe they have to be more humble because they're playing against Paris Saint-Germain or Real Madrid or whatever. But you still have that confidence, that mindset that comes from being part of a
Inter Miami had
team.
that. Inter Miami had that since sort of match day 1 up until they played against PSG. They had the confidence, but you looked at them and they were never going to be able to compete with PSG because you're looking at Busquets at 38 and Suarez at 38.
Stop making excuses for
No,
them.
you're looking at age. So come on, when you look at the Inter Miami team, they've done
give you a better
unbelievably well
example.
to get there, but they're never
Let me
going to
give you
beat
a much
PSG.
better example. Al Ahly, who put them to the sword in the first game.
Should have been 4-0 up and should have been down
And
10 men.
in the last game when the guy scored the hat trick.
Yeah, but they beat Porto.
Yeah, I mean, it
Messi
was
free
4-4.
kick.
It was 4-4.
No, Inter Miami, they beat Porto.
Yeah, we stop talking. We're obsessed with Inter Miami.
I'm not, but these are the games I commentated on.
Should have done more Al Ahly.
I did. Against Inter Miami, they should have been 4-0 up against them. They battered them.
So I think we're learning a lot. But let's wait till the end of the tournament to draw our final conclusions. All right, enough PSG, best team in the world. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's do it.
Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund 3-2 and will take on Paris Saint-Germain in the semifinal. Dawn, they looked dominant, but they nearly threw it all away at the end. Some huge blunders from Rudiger and Dean Hutchison getting himself sent off.
Yeah.
And then requiring that superb save from Thibaut Courtois at the end.
They did. I'm not sure what to make of this new Real Madrid side. I know it's Xabi Alonso's first few games, so we're not judging him. I just look at this Real Madrid side now, and I think they look very young. And Hutchison wearing that Real Madrid shirt is a big shirt to fill, big shirt to wear. Whereas Goulet going to play, there's lots of youth in that side, which can be brilliant for the future. I just feel when you've lost Toni Kroos and you've lost Luka Modric, they're going to need that little bit of experience in midfield. But exciting times for them going forward. If you're a fan, you're watching this young side, you think, like, amazing team to watch. I'm just not sold on the bigger prizes. Can they get there?
And is Gonzalo Garcia legit?
Looks legit to me. I mean, I've not seen loads of him. I've seen the 3-4 games that he's played. I watch Real Madrid, and I think the fix is a very easy one. I think it's either buy a number 9, someone that can occupy the width of the 18-yard box, play Vinny Jr. on the right, play Kylian on the left. I think it's pretty simple. Or this Garcia could be the one.
We'll get to that. I thought Arda Güler looked really sharp
Amazing.
in midfield. And when you have such extreme brain farts, individual errors like Rudiger and Hutchison, I'm less concerned than when your issues are more systemic.
I'll tell you why I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned on Niko Kovac playing Niklas Zula on the right side of a 3-man defence. A guy that's big, coming back from an ACL a fair few years ago, granted, but he's a big boy. You know, he's a big lad. He's like 6'4",
Yeah,
but he's a tank.
Yeah.
You don't want him on the right side of 3. And I commentate on his games, a lot of the games that he played, and he struggled in a 3. Play him in the middle, man. Make his job a little bit more easy. Sticking with Real Madrid, Gab, 4 straight defeats, straw-fed games on the bench for Rodrigo. Is this him gone?
A lot of people are speculating. I think Real Madrid wouldn't mind monetizing him, as people say. I think the issue is I don't know what his market is. Because they're going to want a big number for him.
Yeah.
Equally, we saw last season Rodrigo plus Vini plus Mbappe plus Bellingham plus Don Hutchison saying they need a proper center forward. I don't know. Does he want to be a super sub? I think this story is going to run and run. I see his minutes coming down. We haven't even mentioned Endrick or Mastantuono, who will be along at some point. Chelsea are also through thanks to a deflected Malagusta shot, though we did see Esteval score a worldie. Don, do Enzo Maresca's boys look like potential champions to you?
Maybe. I think they're growing into the competition. I think they are. I think they're lucky that they had an indifferent result and they've ended up on the right side of the draw, but they're in the semis against Fluminense, a very defensive side. But when you watch Chelsea, they're growing on me. I must admit, I was a bit critical last season. Maresca's style. I thought he'd lost the Chelsea sort of DNA at Stamford Bridge. Anyone that's played there over the decades will tell you it should be a hard place to go because the fans want to have that affinity and connection with the players. I thought it looked like he was the disciple of Pep and just wanted to slow, and I didn't think it suited his team. Now, I thought they were too slow. In this competition, they've been better. They're growing on me. Again, another team that needs experience. They need to go and buy age now. They need to go and find a younger Thiago Silva. A younger Frank Leboeuf.
They're not going to do that, so let's forget that.
Why not?
Joe Pedro's as far as you get.
Why should they not buy a 30-year-old instead of a 17-year-old?
Because it doesn't fit the business model.
Well, then they're not going to win then.
All
right. A late strike from Hercules give Fluminense a 2-1 win over Al Hilal, Gab. They are still undefeated. Dark horses?
It's a big ask, but you know what? They don't match up badly against Chelsea. I mean, like, Chelsea may go and batter them if they score early. Cole Palmer pulling something out of thin air, as we've seen him do, as we saw him do in this game, in fact. That said, this is a really defensive team, and they're well organized. I think it's a well-coached team.
Yep.
They can grind you down. Kano maybe nicking a goal at the other end. Thiago Silva beating his chest.
Did you see the clip of Thiago Silva in one of the games literally managing the team? So literally at the end of the game, he was managing the team. I think they went into extra time somewhere, and he literally took over from the coach and said, "Right, we're changing system. We're going to do this, that, and that."
He's the smartest guy on the pitch. Why shouldn't he be doing that? Now in the final against both Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid, I think that is
it's gonna be
a bridge too far. But
it's going to be hard against Paris, isn't it?
If they get there, worry about Chelsea first. Don, we're not done because we have more quick hits.
What?
Defending champions England got off to a rocky start at the Women's Euros, Don. Beaten 2-1 by France and the mesmeric Sandy Baltimore.
She looks a player.
Yeah.
She looks a proper player. I was watching the...
I want to say Bodymore because that's what they call it in The Wire, but I'm sure there's a better French pronunciation.
I was trying to think
Jules will
of
explain.
a male comparison. The way she sort of got power low centre of gravity, plays in different positions, really skillful. Balance is amazing, goes past players for fun. And I watched the game and I listened to Karen Carney, a good friend of mine, and I really respect Karen. And she said they got bullied, England. She said, take the last 5 minutes out of it where England were quite good because they had a go. She said for the rest of the game, they got absolutely bullied. I'm not sure if that was your take on the game, but I tend to agree with Karen.
I thought they were all over the place. Really, really vulnerable on the wings. Weird to me that I felt the England waited to make changes, which you could see it wasn't working. You could see the fullbacks couldn't handle the French wingers, whether it was Cascarino or, and yeah, there was no real authority on there, and there's obviously a weird vibe around England with some of the players.
Seems like they've regressed. Seems like they've really regressed.
They need to come back big time against Holland. Otherwise, they're going home. If they lose to Holland, they're out. So, food for thought.
Big game. Nico Williams isn't going anywhere, Gab. We thought he was for a while. He's just signed a 10-year contract with Bilbao. Barcelona are reportedly looking at Luis Diaz.
Yeah, I think we want to park that Diaz talk for a while for obvious reasons. But look, it's funny with this one, right? Because a year ago...
The fans hammered him as well when they thought he was on the move, didn't they?
Well, look, a year ago, remember people thought he was on the move after the Euros, and then he signs his contract and he says, no, I love it here. This is my home. But then he put in a 60 million euro release clause. Again, he's repeating the stuff again. Most important thing is listen to your heart. I am where I want to be with my people. This is my home, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but now he still has a release clause in his contract. A higher one, 90 million. So you're always kind of giving yourself that out. As much as you love Athletic Bilbao. I don't think he had a great season. I don't know. I think this is a good swerve. I think he still has to grow as a player to justify these types of numbers. And Marcus Rashford, of course, linking himself, or his people linking himself to Barcelona.
Doing his best, isn't he?
I know. He really wants to move. Not exactly surprised, but Martin Zubimendi to Arsenal is finally done. He's the answer in front of the back four.
He is, mate, yeah. Well, it is because it allows Declan Rice to play further forward and it gives Declan Rice that little bit of freedom to try and get forward. Looking at his numbers, looking at Zubimendi's stats, they're not particularly amazing when you see them in black and white, but he does, I think, out of the 20 sort of highest ranked midfield players, I think he's the one that passes forward the most. So that's quite an important stat if you're an Arsenal statistician or a fan and you want to see what your midfield is about. A holding midfield player, does he just go side to side? Does he keep hold of the ball but doesn't really go anywhere? Zubimendi does. He'll play the ball quicker into wide players. He'll play the ball into front men a lot quicker. So it's a really important part of the game.
He's not a physical freak as an athlete in terms of strength and mobility, perhaps, but he makes up for it, I think, with his intelligence.
Yeah. So Zubimendi will replace Thomas Partey just a few days after his contract expired. Sensitive one, this one for me, Gab.
Yeah, Partey was charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault. Now, regular listeners will know, I think everybody and their mother knew, that he had these accusations hanging against him. Later on, there was an investigation. Because of the laws in this country, where we work, we weren't allowed to mention any of this, even when he was under investigation, even after he was arrested and then released. That's the law. You may figure out why I referenced many times Partey may have other issues. Go look on the internet. I find it absolutely absurd when anybody with an internet connection knew what was going on. And Arsenal knew what was going on. Now, there's a legal principle, is you are innocent until proven guilty. Some clubs, when we've had situations comparable to this, not identical, some clubs, when they know their players is being accused or being investigated, they say, you know what, you go sort yourself out. You're not playing for us until the situation is resolved. Arsenal chose to continue until he was actually charged. That is a decision that they made. They may have more information than I do. I think they're facing some backlash about this. What I refuse to believe is those stories where Partey was negotiating a new contract and they were considering keeping him. I don't believe that for 1 second, that Arsenal would be so stupid when they knew that this was likely going to come. And they knew that either way they had somebody who had been accused by multiple women. I think Arsenal were just counting down the days when he could be gone. And I don't believe, because it really would have been a major, major black eye if they really had considered extending his contract until his case was resolved. And now, of course, we'll see what happens. More Arsenal. Fabrizio Romano is reporting that they have an agreement in principle with Victor Gyökeres. Now it's just a question of agreeing a fee with Sporting. It's going to be north of 70 million euros. Money well spent?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at the money, I mean, obviously, all the big transfer now, the fees you go call, that's a lot of money. But you're looking at probably a proven goal scorer. Where if you look at Benjamin Šeško, who's a little bit rawer but a lot younger, I think Gyökeres for Arsenal probably makes more sense. I think you're not going to get too much on any sort of sell on after that. But who cares if you're an Arsenal fan? Who cares really? You're not an accountant. You just want the best players.
Yeah, I'm not a Gyökeres guy. I've said this before. Sounds like a lot of money, wrong age profile.
You're the one that never gets a mention. And we had a conversation before, and I said it on FC when I was in America. João Pedro never gets a mention, so he's just gone to Chelsea. And Ekitike never gets a mention. I think he's a brilliant footballer. Would suit Liverpool, would suit the way Arsenal play. Never gets a mention. The Šeškos.
Victor Osimhen and Dusan Vlahovic, except for right here.
Exactly.
But hey, who knows how these things work. The one thing which I had to laugh about, I even tweeted about this, was a rare tweet for me, is Gyökeres' agent put out a story saying, like, Gyökeres is so desperate that he's made a big sacrifice. He's sacrificing 2 million euros to come to Arsenal.
2 million to make 20? It's not a bad sacrifice.
Yeah, what he's doing is he's told Arsenal that he's going to take 2 million euros less over the next 5 years, so that then Arsenal can put more in the pot
of course.
for the transfer fee.
That's the way it works.
Not a sacrifice, dude. Not a sacrifice.
Football has been doing that for years. Even in my day, I'm agreeing with you. What I'm saying is, it looks good from the outside when you say I'd sacrifice some money. What you're doing is you're saying to the club that you're playing for, don't worry about the money that you owe me. I'll make it up at the other end. That's basically what happens.
What he's doing is he's going to take less money from Arsenal, but he's still going to
over a couple of more years
extra, and he's still going to make 5 times what he was making before.
And who cares? Who cares in terms of the amount of money that they're getting paid? You can make that up quite quickly. So $1 million here doesn't really sort of mean a lot. Gab, UEFA have been busy fining clubs for violating financial sustainability. Chelsea, Barca, Villa.
Yeah, and others too, but we're going to focus on these. And these are big, big fines. Now, there's two rules. One is the football earnings rule, where you can only lose so much money and over a certain period of time. The other one is a squad cost, where wages plus amortization can only be a certain percentage of your total revenue. Chelsea, between the two of them, they've been fined 31 million euros. And then there's another 60 million over the next 3 years, which they will be fined if they don't hit their targets.
But in the meantime, they're buying another couple of players.
Well, this is the thing, right?
Blows my mind.
Villa had been fined 11 euros guaranteed, plus potentially 20. Barcelona, 15 million, plus potentially another 45. Now, the thing is, there's something called a List A problem, where in their Champions League squad, and this could really bite for Villa and especially for Chelsea, in the Champions League squad, they can only register new players if they can then move players out of their current List A squad, the one they had at the end of the season, the Conference League, and they have to turn a profit doing that. I think that could be a little bit tricky, and without getting too technical about it, it could slow them down a little bit. So we'll see how much this actually bites.
See this out.
All right. You're not a believer.
Pain in the backside.
Now, Chelsea can go some way towards alleviating their issues if Noni Madueke leaves for Arsenal. Don, apparently they want 50 million for him. Does this make sense?
Who for? Who's it make sense? It makes sense for Chelsea. Doesn't make any sense for Arsenal.
Well, you want the best possible backup for Bukayo. Wait, let me guess. Arsenal have a really rubbish guy who plays on the right wing who's not important to the team, right? Oh, no, wait, they have Bukayo Saka.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you're buying a player not for potentially to start on the left-hand side, where you might want to upgrade Martinelli, but you're buying and paying £50 million for a guy that's not going to play ahead of Bukayo Saka.
Maybe you don't like inverted wingers anymore?
Or maybe Arsenal think, Bukayo Saka has had an injury wretched season last year. So it might be a big ask for him to churn out 50 games this season. So I get the backup. I get the argument of strength and depth. I get all that. I think Arsenal fans...
a lot of money to throw around.
Arsenal fans are just buy us a number 9 man. Stop with these other players. Just get us the 9 dog.
Meanwhile, Jamie Giddens to Chelsea is also done.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Don, I've had my say. What say you?
What, on the player, or isn't Chelsea buying 64 million players again?
So, sorry, I'm going to take a step back on this. So I made the point, and I shouldn't be addressing social media, but hey, you leave me no choice, right? I made the point that, like, Jamie Giddens, for me...
Good player.
Good player. He's also a bit raw. And he was at a club that was a bit of a zoo last year, and you can see the individual things. And I said, I wasn't sure about Chelsea adding another winger when you were already presumably adding
11
Estevao.
forwards. 11 forwards.
No, it's not about the numbers. It's about
Well, it is.
a guy. No, let me finish, please. It's about adding a guy who I think still has to develop.
Yep.
Right, he's got margins to develop. He's very promising. He's a little older, but than Estevao.
Yep.
And I don't know that you can carry two guys like that. And then people pointed out, oh no, but he's right-footed. Chelsea don't have enough right-footed players because Mudryk is out. And all of a sudden, this became a big thing. The right-footed winger. And now, of course, fast forward a little bit. Okay, apart from the fact they have Nico Jackson, who's also right-footed and can also play on the left wing because they signed Rory Delap. Now they signed João Pedro as well. And guess what? The guy also he can play on either wing as well.
Yeah.
You've got Neto who can play on either wing. This is not a big deal. Anyway, sorry. I was not going to talk about Gittins. I'll let you decide.
No, I think you probably nailed it. I think he's a very good player, but I don't think he's a massive upgrade on what they've got. It's
on
just
Neto, you mean?
Pardon?
On Neto?
On Neto.
And it goes to Mudryk?
And well, Mudryk's a different story. That's a whole new story in a different debate, probably for another day. But
is it that big a deal to be able to have a right-footed player as opposed to...
No,
Okay,
just buy good players. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've got 11 lefties in your team. If they're all messy, you're absolutely fine. It doesn't matter.
Well, and now, of course, Madueke potentially leaving. So who knows who the other winger is going to be.
Well, that's why I mentioned
And we've seen a lot of Cole Palmer on the right in this. I don't want to see that.
But this is why I mentioned the numbers. I mean, 11 forwards to date that they potentially got Chelsea. So again, I get the thickening up of a squad and Champions League football. I get all of that, but it just blows my mind. All the PSR, all the fines they're getting, the size of the contracts that they're giving. And, every day's a school day for me, so I'm learning a lot about what's happening at Chelsea. But I don't think Gittins is a massive upgrade on what they've got.
Forget the
when I said before, if I was...
But what they have is who?
Well, they've got lots of players that can play in that position.
Who?
Madueke can play in that position if he stays on. Neto can play in that position. Cole Palmer's got enough brains about him to play in that position.
He's not going to play on the left-hand side, I presume. But yeah. But here's my thing, all right? Let's make this very simple then, right? The 3 forward spots, right? Right wing, left wing. Presumably we have Cole Palmer as our number 10, right? You get promoted, director of football or Maresca for the day. And who are your your 2 on the right wing, center forward, and left wing?
I mean, I'd have to absolutely study that squad inside out in terms of the numbers. But going back to what I wanted to say before was, if I was Maresca in Chelsea, before buying another winger and another forward, I'd buy a centre-half with experience. That's why I mentioned the likes of Thiago Silva and Frank LaBeouf.
9 centre-backs.
No, but you need an experience. They need to start adding. Need to start adding that brain power to what they've got because they're a brilliant young side. I'm getting to love them. But you can have too many players competing for the same position.
Maybe Thiago Silva can come back.
Or Frank LaBeouf.
There you go.
Right, Bayern boss Uli Hoeneß had words of praise about Stuttgart's big man. How do you pronounce this boy's name? I've not seen a lot of him, Gab.
Nick Woltemade.
Woltemade. Is it the answer?
Or Voldemort, as some of us like to call him. And by the way, he's Bayern unofficial boss emeritus in the sky. He's the answer, but you don't know what the question is because he is so unusual. He is, I think, 6'7", 6'8", like 1.98 m. But
position?
He's like a number 10, but then he's a mismatch guy. You assume he could play center forward.
So we thinking of Thomas Müller-ish?
No, your obsession. No, he doesn't.
No, I'm just trying. I'm trying to compare.
No, I think he's much more technically gifted than Thomas Müller. He's got the flicks and the trick.
Okay.
Some people have compared him. And I feel like I should wash my mouth out with acid for even suggesting this to Zlatan, simply because he's tall and he's physical, but he also has a deft touch. He's not super quick. Can he be a center forward? I don't know. He gives you something different. I think he can play up front. I mean, at Stuttgart, he played behind a striker, but he could presumably, fill in for Kane when he's not there. He's a talent. He's a piece of clay. And I think that's their thinking, and hopefully not that expensive, and they can work out what to do with it. Manchester United have given Matthias Cunha the number 10 shirt, which used to belong to one Marcus Rashford. Of course, he's been told that he's free to find a new club, along with Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony, Jadon Sancho, and Terrell Malacia. None of this is a surprise, but would the club have been better off at least pretending there was a way back for some of these players?
I mean...
Like, why you got to say, all right, everybody, here's Garnacho for sale. Come take him.
Here's my house. Do you want to buy this house? The roof is absolutely knackered. I've got a massive leak. All right, I'll give you less money for your house. I think the clever way to do it is to try and get as much money as you can and say nice things about these players. But I think we're living in an age now, Gab, where everyone's done their homework on players. It's not like I'm playing 25 years ago and you can try and sell me if my legs are falling off and say, yeah, he's got a good football brain, though. You might want to take him. Right? I think everyone knows. And you see the pictures of Garnacho wearing the Rashford Villa shirt the other week. That was an ugly look. That wasn't particularly well
what do we
thought
think?
out.
All that's going to happen now is that these guys are going to sit there and they're going to wait until the transfer deadline day.
I think they'll move them on. And I think Man United will move them on and take...
On deadline day. Why would you move? You just wait
because
for the price to come down.
But there's different ways to look at it. You can look at the price tag coming down, right? Which obviously you're taking a little bit of a loss on, but also you're winning in terms of getting those wages off the books. So Rashford's $350 a week or $375 a week. You might take less on the transfer fee, but you're getting...
Makes no sense.
It does make sense.
No, it makes zero sense.
Let's just say he's worth 50 million quid.
Excuse me.
Hang on. Let's just say he's worth 50 million quid. Deadline day, you sell him for 40. I've lost 10 million quid. You make that up on every single week by you saving your 375 that you'd be paying him.
So July and August, you're still paying his wages if you're Manchester United.
But you don't want him sitting in a different block of the building, not even training and Garnacho.
But that's exactly what you're doing.
No, but you move him. No, you're selling. My position is you try and move him on. That's what they're trying to do. That's why they've give Cunha the number 10
they have
shirt.
no leverage.
Because that's a little dig to Marcus Rashford saying your number's gone, pal.
All right,
your number 10's gone.
All right.
You're going to have to move on, and Rashford knows it as well. When Amorim said I'd rather play my goalkeeping coach or whatever it was at 60-odd years of age before Marcus Rashford, you know you're done.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. But all I'm saying is what this means realistically is I make a deal. If I'm a club,
you're a buying club.
I agree. Yes, I'm a buying club.
Yeah.
I agree terms with, forget Rashford, with Garnacho or Sancho or Anthony. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is what's going to happen with
Man
Betis.
United just want these boys
Can I
gone.
finish?
Yeah. Sorry. But Man United want these boys gone.
I get it. What Man United want. They're running a business here. So what's going to happen, I would predict, because it's a logical thing to happen, is I'm Betis. I make a deal with Anthony.
Yeah.
And then I agree personal terms with him. I agree or somebody else agrees personal terms with Garnacho. And I wait for the clock to tick until deadline day.
Yeah.
And then at that point, United, A, have paid 2 more months of these guys' ridiculous wages. And secondly, United are saying, oh, wait a minute. If I don't agree, if I don't take what's on offer now, I'm stuck with these dudes for another 3 months and have to pay more wages.
Correct.
And then they'll be worth even less in January.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying is when I don't have leverage.
And I think you're correct. But Man United will panic because they haven't got the leverage at the last minute. So what you're saying is 100% right.
So not the smartest thing to do, I think, but whatever.
Juve, they've signed Jonathan David as a free agent. Gab, what does this mean for Colomani or your boy Dusan Vlahovic?
Colomani's on loan. They were going to try to extend them. I think they need 2 center forward options, right? So there's obviously David plus Colomani plus Vlahovic. That adds up to 3.
Mm-hmm.
I know David and Colomani can play on the wing as well, but realistically, they have a billion wingers. I don't think this changes the equation too much. I think it basically means that they have to either not take Colomani or find a solution for Vlahovic. Vlahovic has a year left. Extending him is going to be almost impossible.
I can't improve his wages, some mental wages.
Well, he'd have to take a pay cut over more years. I don't know how much of a fee you're going to get back to him. He's got all the leverage. Colomani, that means it's going to be hard for them to renegotiate their loan extension with Paris Saint-Germain. And so maybe he'll go back to Paris Saint-Germain. If I had to guess right now, I would guess the strikers next season, it's more likely it's going to be Jonathan David and Dusan Vlahovic. Newcastle are close to your heart, Don.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of them signing Anthony Elanga for 55 million euros and pursuing Atalanta's Giorgio Scalvini for 30 million?
Well, Scalvini, as you know, Gab, is a player that I've loved for absolutely ages.
We all love him in his curly hair, except he's always seriously injured.
Well, yeah, his ACL was a massive knockback. Still young, but one of these guys, when I have contacts in the Premier League, managers-wise, I often ping some of them across, some players that I love who I've seen along the way. Scalvini was one. I just think he reminds me of a sort of... When he was fit and when he was flying, he reminded me of a young John Stones. I think he makes the game at times look very easy. Now he's got to try and get back to that level after the injury. So I take that point. So 30 million.
And Newcastle's history with very talented centre-backs.
I know.
With injuries. I'm thinking
Sven Botman.
No. Yeah, Botman.
Yeah. Elanga has to be done. I think if you're Newcastle now, you've got a good. The PSR thing drives me up the wall. It really drives me crazy how you can try and finish in the Champions League, but then you have to sell some players to try and balance the books. It was a little bit like when Villa got in the top 4 and they had to sell Douglas Luiz. It grinds my gears how you get into the top 4 and you're not really allowed to kick on to try and challenge for the top 2. Really bugs me.
Live within your means.
All right. So now it feels like Newcastle got a bit of money. So to me, I'm not an accountant. If it's 50 million for Elanga, spend it. If it goes to 55 add-ons, spend it, because that's the one position.
Richard, for this kind of money, I know they love doing deals with my boy, Mr. Marinakis. Why not take Elliot Anderson back for that kind of money?
Because they need a right winger. Elliot Anderson, how good he was last season, probably wouldn't get in Newcastle's midfield.
Can't Harvey
3.
Barnes play on the right wing?
He can do. And Jacob Murphy's had a great season. But I think what they want is they want that competition. They lost Almiron. They lost the boy Minte, who went to Brighton, who plays in that position as well. So I think they're trying to identify a young, fast winger to try and play on that side. Because I had that argument with Stevie Nicol in the Carabao Cup final. I said Newcastle's 3 in midfield are better than Liverpool's midfield 3, in my humble opinion. I said I wouldn't swap any of them. And I'll stand by that. I think the 3 of them together.
Swap Jolinton for McAllister.
as in the 3 who work together. No, of course you'd swap the personnel, but it's a little bit like the PSG 3. They complement each other really well.
Would you swap coaches with Liverpool?
Not telling you. I love Eddie Howe. Probably not, no. Okay. What's happening with Copenhagen's Rooney Bargi is expected to undergo a medical at Barca, Gab. Could join for as little as €2 million. Smart business?
I think so. Bargi comes with a lot of baggage. Jules absolutely loves him. Jules goes and watches weirdo YouTube videos in the middle of the night, so he knows everything about Bargi. I've only seen highlights of him. He's a very skillful player. He's had a tricky time. I think there are major issues with agents, contract winding down. If you're Barcelona, I think this is a low downside. This is not a lot of money to spend. You can do it and still stay within your many restrictions. You're getting a forward who can play on either wing, and a guy that you can probably move on and get your money back if it doesn't work out. So I think this is good news if you're a Barcelona fan. Kyle Walker is off to Burnley on a 2-year deal. Don, what does he have left to give in your view?
I think he has experience. I think he's got a lot to give. I think
you would add experience to Burnley too.
Well, when you look at Burnley last season, they were one of the best defensive sides in terms of clean sheets around. But I think you buy someone like Kyle Walker, and I think it's a good investment. I think he adds that experience.
Good long-term investment?
No, but it's not long-term when you sign him for next to nothing. You add that winner in the dressing room. If you're the manager Scotty Parker, and you can bounce ideas off. And I've had that in my career when older players come into a dressing room, and I've been one of them. What you can do is you can give vital information to a lot of the younger players on a daily basis, so the manager hasn't got to then worry about that. So you're buying Kyle Walker for the dressing room, and he can still contribute.
I think the leadership side of it, in terms of bouncing ideas and stuff and defensive.
Well, I mean bouncing ideas. I just mean be that link between. Instead of the manager going into a dressing room and constantly
he just does not seem to be like the sharpest football brain. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, but the number of times he gets caught out of position and stuff like that.
But that's been his life. But I think
that's what I mean. So I don't know if this is the guy I want teaching my young center backs.
No, I don't mean teaching them the football knowledge, the football side, the leadership and how to act on a daily basis inside the 4 walls of a dressing room. Yeah. And you can take that sort of semi-coaching role when you're listening to. We used to have a thing at Coventry called the Coffee Club, and there's me, Rob Page, Dennis Wise, a couple of other boys. We used to go and see the manager every Monday morning, go and have a cup of coffee with the manager. We'd all just chew the fat over the weekend. Then he'd rely on us 4 or 5 players to go down and manage the dressing room. That's what I think Kyle Walker will bring. He'll be able to manage Scotty Parker's dressing room on a daily basis from a Monday to Friday, before then he does all the important stuff at the weekend.
Dennis Wise scored a great goal.
Good player. Parma's Anjon Bonny is officially an Inter player, Gab. 24 million. Makes sense?
Yeah. He's another forward, wingery type. I think, obviously, in terms of the strikers are going to be Thuram and Lautaro Martinez. When you play with a front 2, you don't necessarily need to have that number 9 guy. And there's debate about whether he's better on the wing or better centrally. Doesn't score a lot of goals, but he's a good provider. And I think with Correa gone and Arnautovic finally gone, hey, it's nice to have somebody who's not 30-something on the bench. So he and Taremi are going to be the alternative. I'm okay with that. Tottenham keep getting linked with Mohamed Kudus. Don, where does he fit, if at all? Don't they have enough forwards.
Another team like Chelsea, who seem pretty stacked in that position. So 50 odd million quid. I think what they're probably looking at, Thomas Frank's looking at the potential of Kudus and the versatility. He can play as a number 10. So I think what you're buying is a player.
James Madison can play.
I know,
and
Kulusevski. I'm just going to say Kulusevski, who's the best one of the lot, but a bit injury prone last season. So I think you're buying a player in Mohamed Kudus that there's so much more growth in him. 50 million seems a lot when you've got
he's
lots.
He's not that young. He's not
no,
like
I know,
19.
but I just think he's one of them, Gab. He's one of these players that you watch him and you think you can be so much better than what you're doing and what you're giving. So if you can get the best out of him, I mean, I think his buyout clause was something stupid like, I think it was close to like 90 million quid because Liverpool had a sniff. I think Newcastle had a sniff and the buyout clause I think was a little bit too much. So if you get him for sort of 40, 50, I know there's competition, but I think you're looking at a player that's got more growth in him. Whereas you look at James Madison, you think, right, he's at probably his ceiling. Right. Kulusevski's my favourite, but injury prone. But I look at Kudus, I think he's probably the one player. Brendan Johnson's probably at his ceiling. You're not going to get loads more
you
out
see
of
him as a 10. You don't see him as a centre forward.
No, he's not a centre forward. I see Kudus as a 10 or a winger. I think he's versatile to do both. Right. I think on his best games, when I looked at Jared Bowen playing on one side, right side, Kudus off the left or a 10, I think he can do both. So I just think it's the potential. I think it's the growth that you potentially could get out of him. Pablo Torres leaving Barca for Mallorca, €5 million. Good deal.
Yeah, I think his contract was winding down. He's a very, very technically gifted player. He's not a great athlete. He's a set piece specialist was the joke about him. I think Barcelona have better players in his position. And there's €5 million. Every little helps. Back to the women's Euros, Don. Caroline Graham-Hansen scores late to give Norway a 2-1 win over Finland. This was very nervy for Norway, given how talented the team is and how many big players they have. So they always feel like less than the sum of their parts.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just one of them where you're just looking at a couple of Scandinavian sides and it's all about the win. I mean, did you see the winner? The cross-come sort of shot? Bit fortunate, but I think it's one of them when you play the first game in the group. I just think you can analyse the tactics, you can analyse the performance. They're stacked at the top end of the pitch. It's all about the win. Yeah,
you say that, but then you see Spain play Portugal. They destroy them 5-0. Looked like they could have scored 50 goals.
Ask the England players, would you rather play crap and won 1-0?
True. No, but I'm saying some teams look really good off the bat. Others, like Norway, who are maybe not as talented as Spain, but have the individual talent.
I mean, Spain looked the team to me.
Oh, my God.
I mean, incredible team. Germany got off to a 2-0 win over Poland, Gab. Was this straightforward?
No, not at all. Took them a while to get going. It took like a sort of wonder goal, I thought, from Brandt, from outside the...
I think they had like 25 shots or something, didn't they? Every time they kept peppering the goal.
But at the other end, they were also conceding. Eva Pajor, some people say the best center forward in the women's game right now. She got free a couple of times. Germany, I think, were also really rattled because Julia Gwynn, their right back, suffered that will look like a pretty nasty injury in the first half. But I think they're going to be all right. I mean, 2 goals, the more is to come. I'd be surprised if they get to the final like they did last year, because I do think there are, certainly Spain and France have looked better than them. But, it depends how the draw shapes up as well. Just 6 months after arriving at El Nasser for a fee of around $80 million, John Durán is off to join Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahçe on loan. Don, can you work this out? Is this mystical Mendes magic?
I can work this one out because I've commentated on Al Nassr and John Durán quite a bit last season. And he looked a player to me that was just completely lazy. Maybe he didn't want to be there. Maybe he's looked a bit disinterested, just walked around the pitch. So I'm not surprised that Al Nassr have moved him on. I think the potential in the player is there. We saw that at Villa. But I think it's going to need Jose's magic to get the best out of him, because I think he looks like hard work.
All I'm going to say about this is, if I'm Al Nassr, I mean, you know more about this as you follow the Saudi Pro League closer than I do. Whoever signed off on this deal and then said, all right, let's cut our losses after 6 months. I want him fired immediately.
But you can never.
I want him in stocks in the square in Jeddah or wherever.
But you don't know what the player's character is going to be like until you bring him through the door.
Oh, really? Well, I'm sorry. There's teams who hire private investigators to know somebody's character. But you do your homework on him and on whether you can settle. $80 million is an enormous amount of money. And look what happens at Fenerbahçe, right? It's not like we're going to see him in the Champions League because Fenerbahçe won't be in the Champions League, right? So what's going to happen? Even assuming Mourinho turns him around.
He'll score goals for them.
Okay, maybe not, but maybe he does, right? What happens all of a sudden is you're going to have a guy, are Al Nassr going to take him back and sell him somewhere in Europe and make their money back? No, they won't. No. You know that's not going to happen, right? It's going to become, I imagine it's going to become a Gesti Food thing. I mean, honestly, like, I know this is an age-old issue in football in the Saudi Pro League and in general.
I don't think it's just them. I just think they invested in a young player that they looked at Villa and thought he's a great, he's a fantastic
Let me finish,
player.
Please. I'm talking about people making decisions with other people's money. That is. And then you take bigger risk and then, look, it doesn't work out, but that's okay.
But what if you're scouting and your data team does all the work on John Durán and it all comes back positive? Hang on. Yeah. And it comes back all positive and you look at his numbers and his stats and you bring him in, you think, that looks like a smart signing. Yeah. Then he gets there and he doesn't want to do it. You can't really blame the boys at the top. You've got to look at the player and go, well, that's on you.
No, you blame the boys at the top. And the other thing is, you make him stay and you turn him around and you ask your coach and your director of football, can you work with this guy? Or are you going to give up on him after 6 months? I mean, honestly, I think there's weirdness going on with this John Durán stuff. That's all I'm going to say.
Is that it?
26.
I thought we'd done that one. Not just one Ancelotti in Brazil, Gab, but two Ancelottis. Davide has reportedly agreed to take over Botafogo. What does this mean?
First of all, it means I get to say, it's time! It's time! It's Texter time! That's right, John Texter has signed Ancelotti to manage Botafogo, signed Ancelotti for his team. We thought he was down and out. Leon getting relegated, potentially. He's been forced to sell his share in Crystal Palace. Now he gets Ancelotti with the many Champions League titles. Well, not him, obviously. He gets his son, Davide. I don't know. Okay, enough Texter. He's had a rough summer. But what I find interesting is that Davide would choose Botafogo because you've never been a number one. Obviously, he was linked with the Rangers job. At some point, you have to make the transition. I think it's a big step.
Is it like a lazy move? His dad's gone to the national side. I'll go to Brazil as well.
No, I don't think it's a lazy move at all because you're going to...
It's a bit coincidental, isn't it?
Oh, whatever. But what I'm saying is, well, first of all, I don't think Carlo's going to move to Brazil. Actually, I think he's going to mostly be in Europe. But... You're going to a club. Well, first of all, you're going to a league that sacks managers continuously, right? The average tenure of a manager is something like 8 months in Brazil, right? Then you're going to a team that especially sacks managers very often in Botafogo. You're going to a country you've never ever worked in before, and you're going to work for John Texter. I mean, you could have chosen an easier on-ramp, right?
So you said John Durán's was weirdness going on. This feels weirdness.
Right, but at least if it doesn't work out, it's Davide Ancelotti who's going to pay the price.
Yeah.
Not PIF and people wasting their money. Napoli are on the verge of picking up Noah Lang from PSV Eindhoven for a €28 million package. Antonio Conte asked for more depth for the Champions League, and he's getting it.
Yeah, it's what he does. They were linked with Garnacho for about 50 million quid. Thought it was too high. £28 million on Noah Lang, I think, makes a lot of sense. I think Conte will work his magic on the player. It does seem like when he's buying the players now at Napoli, he's buying the players that he can mould into a team and not really, I say this very loosely, but carrying any sort of superstars. And I wouldn't bet against Conte making this player into a not a top class player, but a very good player for the team.
Yeah, I said this about Malik Tillman, so I feel like I have to be consistent. If you're coming from PSV Eindhoven, you're coming from Peter Bosz land. Mm-hmm. So talk about a shock to the system going from Peter Bosz to Antonio Conte
in the preseason.
And you're going to have to obviously adapt. What I like about him is he can play as a second striker. He can play on the left wing. I think he can play on the right wing too. And I think Jack Raspadori always seems like he's about to be sold, about to move on.
Yeah.
But at least I think even if he doesn't stay, I think they're going to get somebody else in. So they have that package, so they're not overly reliant. They still have a center forward situation. They're talking about Lorenzo Luca. Maybe they seem to have decided that. Oh, we're not sure Lukaku can last the whole season.
Well, that was my theory watching Napoli a lot last season. Was they're very much heavily reliant on Lukaku and McTominay, so it sort of makes sense trying to add more goals to it.
Yeah. So the question is, do you get a guy who's like Lukaku, like for example Luca from Udinese, who not only
Like
are the
him, by the
names
way.
similar,
Like him.
he's 8 feet tall, he knocks the
love
ball
him.
down, blah blah blah,
I like
right?
him.
Or do you get somebody who's different to Lukaku, who maybe can play with Lukaku if McTominay's not available?
That's the beauty of how you see the game, isn't it? If you're,
Well, how does Hutchinson see it?
I like Luca. I must admit, every time I've worked and commentated on him, I think, and as you said, he's great, but he's not just like one of these really tall guys that you think, oh, he's going to be good in the air because he's 15 feet tall. His feet are really good. He gets hold of the ball. He's a good link man. He can run. I would have probably invested a little bit more money into him, but that's the beauty of football. It's as a coach, how do you see the dynamic of Noah Lang fitting in? I think he'll fit in well under Conte. Gab, this is a horrible story, very sensitive, coming out of the US regarding Jonathan Barnett, the agent, one of the most powerful agents in the world.
Yeah, Jonathan Barnett, longtime super agent. He negotiated, I think he's best known for doing the Gareth Bale deal to Real Madrid, which was a world record at the time, even though officially they couldn't say that because Cristiano had to be the world record. But he's 75 now. I think he's pretty much semi-retired. But he's the subject of a lawsuit. He and CAA, Creative Artists Agency, who he was a part of, Creative Artists bought ICM, which had bought Stellar, which was the agency that Jonathan Barnett founded back in 1992. It's a horrendous story about a woman from Australia who claims that she was taken to the UK and basically sort of forcibly kept by Barnett. There's allegations of sexual assault, of rape, of threats to her life and her kids. Jonathan Barnett denies everything. In a statement, his lawyers say he's going to vigorously defend himself. CAA are co-defendants because they were accused of knowing what was going on. Again, the story went on from 2017 to at least 2024. CAA say that they found out in 2024. Barnett left the company the following month. It's a terrible story. I've met Jonathan Barnett on a number of occasions. He's represented a lot of people over the years. You just hope that this is a story where justice is served and where the truth comes out. But it really is absolutely horrific. Mexico have won the Gold Cup after beating the United States in the final 2-1. Don, your thoughts on Pochettino and what this means? And how about that Gilberto Mora? I don't know why I'm speaking with a fake Portuguese accent. Gilberto Mora, who's Mexican. He doesn't turn 17 until October.
Can you imagine being a 16-year-old?
Yeah, Lamine Yamal can.
Well, he's a genius and he can, and that's probably a brilliant example, but it's 16-year-old playing for the national side, winning the Gold Cup. It must be amazing for him.
What is this? So Pochettino getting to the final and losing, not great, but then again with like a B team.
You'll get a lot of stick over there in the US, tuning into a lot of US TV who have been very critical of him. They should be winning that. I mean, when I say they should be winning that, that's from the American guys and the pundits that I listen to, not up against a very, very good Mexican side. So another pill for Pochettino to swallow.
I just thought they were very passive in the second. I mean, you take
they're
the
not
lead,
a good side.
In the second half, I just thought they were...
They're not a good side.
Yeah.
America, they're not a good side.
Well, let's wait for Pulisic and McKennie and those guys to come back.
Fair enough.
Robinson.
Fair shout, yeah. Ancelotti in Brazil.
No, question number 30, Dom. Come on.
Francesco Farioli is a new Porto boss, Scab. 4 clubs in 4 countries in less than 4 years. Journeyman.
He does things his way. Still very young. He's never been a number 1 in Italy. Of course, he was part of De Zerbi's coaching staff when De Zerbi was in Italy. He's been to Qatar. He was the Qatar under-16 goalkeeping coach. I just love the idea of the guy who says, I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to become a top coach that way. I think you're seeing that increasingly without having had a great career behind him. Biggest thing is you're going from Ajax, where you had an 8-point lead and you threw it away, to Porto, which brings with it a whole different set of challenges. I know Porto, one of your least favorite teams to watch in the Club World Cup.
The death in the Club World Cup, the most passive side-to-side team I've ever seen.
I don't think it's going to be boring for Farioli, but it is a big challenge. And I wonder, too, this whole itinerant, career that he's had. Obviously, people like what they see because he goes from big club to always bigger club.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So he's got the potential to become a really good coach, or is he struggling to keep hold of his jobs? That's why he's on the move.
Well, no, but you're not going to go and hire some 36-year-old who hasn't really won anything, right? So, he was at Nice, and then he jumped ship from Nice, and then he went to Ajax, and blah, blah, blah. So he obviously interviews well. People obviously like what's there.
Ah, the old interview technique.
But he's got to deliver. He's certainly becoming very well-rounded, and I'm sure he'll be a polyglot real soon if he isn't already. Don, that brings us to an end.
Amazing.
Thank you for filling in Jules' little tiny shoes because he has little teeny tiny feet. But Jules will be back from Switzerland on Monday. That's right. Until then, love the game, love your neighbor. Did I say Monday? I meant Thursday. Until then, love the game, love your neighbor, love yourself.